What do you say there, you blood and gore loving degenerates? Well, as I alluded to in the last video, what with the spooky laugh and the werewolf howl and all that, this video will be tackling the horror genre.
The horror! The horror!
That's right, I'm not waiting until October to talk about horror. I love the genre the whole year round, baby. In fact, I find amongst movie buffs, the horror genre is actually a common favorite. I couldn't tell you why for sure, but if I had to speak for myself, I'm honestly chasing that feeling of being scared. It's not often a horror movie actually scares me these days, even though I was a wuss as a kid and wanted nothing to do with the genre back then. But even though these movies so rarely scare me anymore, they still hold a certain appeal for some reason. If I watch a comedy and I don't laugh, I'd probably see that as a failure. The same goes for an action movie if it bores me. But a horror movie not scaring me isn't an automatic failure for whatever reason. I guess it's just the atmosphere and aesthetic I like so much. Yada yada yada, so yeah, horror. Now, what's something I can do with the horror genre that people on the internet will like? Ooh, I know, a top 10 list. Thanks for the idea, Watch Mojo. Top 10 horror movies, too basic. Top 10 horror villains, seen it a million times. You know what? Why don't I just stick with the theme of genre? I'll share with you all my top 10 horror subgenres. Let me just do a quick check on the old YouTube here. Okay, there are a few videos on this, but it's still original enough. But first, a few disclaimers. First, I won't be including horror comedy, horror action, or horror sci-fi. I consider those to be multi-genre rather than subgenres. Also, there's a lot of intersection between the genres, so you may see certain movies more than once. Finally, and I'm sorry to say this, but Possession just barely missed the top 10. But don't worry, The Exorcist will still be mentioned. Like I just said, intersection between the genres and all that. So how about we kick this thing off? Starting off the list at the number 10 spot is zombies. Now, trust me, I like zombies a lot, but I was actually debating whether I should place them or Possession at the number 10 spot. I went with the zombies mainly because Possession will cross with a few other entries on here. Also, while zombies aren't an absolute favorite of mine, there's no denying what they've meant for horror history. Way back in 1932, White Zombie gave us the hypnotized voodoo zombies under the control of Bela Lugosi himself. But when anyone thinks of zombies, let's be honest, they think of the flesh eaters that George Romero popularized with his Dead series. In fact, another thing that helped this subgenre score the number 10 spot was the original Night of the Living Dead from 1968 just by itself. I actually plan on doing a video in the future, probably October, breaking down why that one's an overall perfect horror film. And the rules have been played around with so much since then that the genre has stayed interesting. We've got slow zombies, fast zombies, zombies that eat flesh, those that eat brains exclusively, different ways to kill them. Some zombies have no humanity, some have a sliver of humanity left, and some still have enough to break your freaking heart!
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
So yeah, zombies get the number 10 spot. Coming in at number 9 is crime horror.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
You know, it always bugs me when people say The Silence of the Lambs isn't a horror movie. You got one dude breaking people down psychologically and eating people, and another dude skinning women and wearing it as a flesh suit. Get out of here with that suspense thriller nonsense. Anyway, crime horror is great because it's typically so grounded in reality. Sure, the original Halloween is pretty grounded up until the very end, but crime horror usually has that detective angle that investigates the grim and gritty details of the horror. When characters are searching the crime scene and we see fingerprints under the black light or the mutilated remains of the victim under such cold, sterile conditions, ugh, I just feel so dirty. Anytime I watch Seven, I can't help but think that Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman are investigating the crimes of a real sicko. No, too easy. By the way, I have to give a special shout out to the Italian giallo movies, a subgenre under the crime horror umbrella. I considered those for the list, but I think they fit in nicely here. But yeah, I guess what often gets to me about crime horror is the investigation of the aftermath, rather than the immediate danger, which I'd say is a real achievement for the genre. And coming in the number 8 spot, we've got Creepy Kids.
Is there someone inside you?
Sometimes.
See, I told you The Exorcist would get some love on this list. My appreciation for Creepy Kids probably needs little explanation. The juxtaposition of childhood innocence with demonic possession or just plain evil behavior is what makes these movies so powerful. The Exorcist gets bonus points for showing Regan McNeil's innocent side at the beginning before turning her into a horror show of creepy faces, body contortions, and swear words. Then there's Orphan from 2009, which I may be bending the definition by including it in this spot, but now I'm dancing around that spoiler line. Anyway, Esther starts the movie so sweet and charming, but you just know there's something conniving behind it. Then she goes full-on murder crazy. Also, The Good Son, my goodness gracious. You ever wonder what would happen if Kevin McAllister killed the wet bandits and got a taste for blood? That's The Good Son. Also, for an early example of creepy kids, I'd recommend The Bad Seed from 1956. Ooh, in the original Village of the Damned. Yeah, that's a good one. And in the number 7 spot, we've got body horror. Ugh, you know, blood and gore don't usually bother me. I can watch Sweeney Todd slitting throats, slasher villains chopping people up, but body horror is where it really gets under my skin. This subgenre centers around the corruption of the human body by some sort of disease or transformation that's out of our control. I remember reading somewhere that what makes this subgenre so disturbing is that there is no escape. You can run away from a serial killer, you can stay out of a haunted house, but you can't escape your own body. So when Seth Brundle is gradually becoming the Fly, there's no escape unless he can find a cure. And holy macaroni, the remedy that he comes up with at the end is, yeah.
No, sir, I don't like it.
John Carpenter's The Thing is even worse. There's no experiment gone wrong with the alien. All that needs to happen is you come in contact with the thing, and you are the thing. No more humanity, and your body is just a vessel. Hey, let's also take a look back at the Golden Era, because apparently I'm compelled to do that for every entry that I can. Todd Browning's Freaks ends with a pretty gruesome transformation, and The Island of Lost Souls depicts humanoid animals in a pretty monstrous way. And these classics manage to evoke that same horror without blood or gore. It goes to show, it's definitely more the idea of the body's corruption than the grotesque visuals. Up next in the number 6 spot is Creature Features. Now, who doesn't love a classic monster movie? No, not those classic monster movies. I'll talk about them a little later. Creature Features are a little hard to pin down just because of how many monsters can fill it out. You got your werewolves, your gremlins, humanoid mole people, killer brains. Actually, that's Fiend Without a Face, and it's pretty solid if you ask me. Anyway, what else is there to say? Monster movies are great. Some are genuinely scary, some are just a ton of fun, and others strike the balance in between. Yeah, I guess that's it. Monsters are cool. Next! We're halfway through the list, and coming in at the number 5 spot is occult horror.
Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Yes.
I gotta say, witchcraft is a horror staple that I don't think gets as much love as it should. Don't get me wrong, there have been some great witch movies over the years, including some of my favorites like City of the Dead with Christopher Lee and Dario Argento's Suspiria. But I feel like this subgenre hit a sort of a renaissance period in the 2010s. You got The Witch from 2015, the Suspiria remake in 2018, as well as Ari Aster's double whammy of Hereditary and Midsommar. And I'll tell you, like many fans of the horror genre, Aster's movies are the first ones to successfully scare and stick with me for a good long while. But regarding occult movies more broadly, this subgenre is a good spooky time. I especially love the dream logic of the original Suspiria. It really puts you in this space where you're not sure of what's going on, and it feels like a magical sort of trance. Plot details are explained vaguely in the background, if at all, and the point of the movie really is to just give yourself over to this mysterious technicolor world of the Coven, almost as if a spell is being placed on you as the viewer. Stepping their way into the number 4 spot, we've got slasher movies.
Okay, Linda. Come on out.
Once again, what can I say that hasn't been said? These are just classic. You all know the basics. A killer, often masked and silent, stalks people down and amasses a body count. I guess I can break down the variety within the genre. The original Halloween is the gold standard. No blood, just suspense and atmosphere throughout. There are those that relish in the blood and entertain you with creative kills. Friday the 13th is the granddaddy when it comes to that. Freddy Krueger gave us a more supernatural element to the genre, using the fantastical element of dreams to get real wild with the kills. But hey, there's more to the genre than just the classic franchises. I'd highly recommend The Funhouse, directed by Tobe Hooper of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist fame. In fact, when I was first getting into horror movies around the age of 15, I remember searching for little-known obscure slashers, because I so fell in love with the genre. You know them, you love them, slashers are a great time. In the number 3 spot, we've got Gothic horror.
As you can see, the housework has been rather neglected since the servants disappeared almost a week ago. You mean they just vanished?
Into thin air.
So I almost feel like I'm cheating with this one, because you can actually fit a lot of different horror elements here. I guess Gothic is more of an aesthetic than the rest of these subgenres, but I can't help myself. You know what I'm talking about. Foggy graveyards, old architecture. Most Gothic horror is old school and takes place in a distant past, though not necessarily the Gothic era. And there's so many great Gothic horror movies, but I have to give a special dedication to the Universal monsters. Man, I may have been scared to watch modern horror movies as a kid, but boy oh boy did I love these movies. I mean, look at the castle in Dracula, the opening cemetery scene in Frankenstein, the woods in The Wolfman, the Amazon rainforest in Creature... Okay, well maybe Creature from the Black Lagoon isn't exactly Gothic. But yeah, love the Universal monsters and needed to talk about them here. Anyway, the Gothic aesthetic as a whole really feeds that same craving for me. The wardrobe in Coppola's Dracula, that ghostly trio in the others, I can eat it up for days. Yeah, this is great stuff. And in the number 2 spot, our silver medal goes to psychological horror.
Behold, the coagula.
This one's a little hard to define, and it'll definitely intersect with some other subgenres. Psychological horror is a little vague, but I read a YouTube comment somewhere that explained it pretty well. Essentially saying that psychological horror is the build-up to a jump scare, but the jump scare never comes. Never releasing you until the end of the movie, and usually well beyond that. I know it's cliche to bring up the Babadook these days because its themes of grief and trauma have been talked about to death, but it really is a masterclass in this area. We see precious little of the titular monster, and when it is there, it's typically just hanging around, or makes its way to our main characters slowly and methodically. Even when it finally makes its move, there's no loud booming music, just the entity's subtle insect-like noises. Another avenue for psychological horror that I personally love is the exploration of your characters' minds, especially your more, let's say, troubled characters. A perfect example is 1 Hour Photo, starring Robin Williams. Can't recommend that one enough. Ooh man, and Identity from 2003. But the less said about that one the better. It is hazardous with spoiler material. And finally, my number 1, the gold medal goes to Ghosts and Haunted Houses. I know it's a basic pick, but I just adore a good spooky ghost story, especially if it's accompanied by the aforementioned Gothic aesthetic. A lot of people don't find ghosts that interesting just because of how intangible they are, but that's exactly why I love them. While I enjoy horror movies of all different stripes, subtlety wins me over better than anything else. In fact, my pick for best haunted house movie is a toss-up between The Haunting and The Changeling. In The Haunting, we never see any ghosts physically manifest. We hear them banging on the bedroom door, and we see them leaving messages for our characters. And there's a really creepy scene in which Eleanor feels someone holding her hand, only to turn on the lights and see there was no one there.
God! Whose hand was I holding?
Now, in The Changeling, we get a few glimpses of the ghost boy, and things get pretty wild near the end. But it's the constant dread and sad story of regret that really affects me. And my goodness, that scene with the ball falling down the stairs? Never since has a child's plaything been so terrifying. You hear me? You'll never be as scary as that ball. And as for you, I still love you, but you're still not as scary. By the way, ghost movies can be big and bombastic too. I'd be remiss not to mention Poltergeist or 1408. But it's that mysterious nature of ghosts that really makes me check behind my back and run out of the room after turning off the lights. Well, there you have it. My top 10 horror subgenres. Obviously, these are just my preferences. I'd love to know what subgenres you love and what staples of horror scare you. Anyway, I'm having a ton of fun with this, and I've got a few videos lined up to be made. That said, I welcome suggestions and would love to cover topics you'd be interested in. Just let me know in the comments. I've been Kenny Steps. Take it easy, and keep stepping into the movies.